Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community where we talk about what's really running the show, your inner world. I'm Angel, your host, your guide, and your spiritual bestie. Around here, we're all about doing the inner work because your outer reality is only ever a reflection of what's going on within. We practice radical ownership, freedom in faith, surrendering our path to God, and trusting our intuition like our lives depend on it. Because honestly, they do. So take a breath, open your heart, and let's dive in. Welcome, welcome, Spirit Club. Hello, hello. Today's guest is one of my closest, dearest friends, Dakota Kidby, and we are going to touch on a very tender topic, one of death, loss, and grief. So we just want to say that up front in case this isn't a topic that you're ready to sit through, to listen to connect through. This is where you stop the podcast here. But I believe life experience is our biggest and most important teacher. And Dakota happens, for better or for worse, to have a lot of life experience on this topic. So we thought that we would take our conversations about loss and grief out of our voice notes and into the podcast in hopes that it might help anyone going through this right now. So on that note, welcome my beautiful friend Dakota.
Thank you, love. And I do have to apologize to everybody on the cast because I am fighting the plague right now. So I've got my pillow. It's a little somatic thing I do to help me feel cozy when I'm talking about hard things. And I've got my coffee.
It
So
kind of feels right though to talk about a hard thing over, like with some, Dakota brought it up beforehand that this helps her talk about difficult things. And I was like, yeah, it feels right. I feel like I want to get cozier. You know what I mean?
and you as you should. Something my somatic therapist taught me is that pulling for things that make us feel cozy or things that we want to touch that make us feel good. Like this is a really soft pillow or blanket, or even just like wrapping yourself in a blanket. Um, all of that is okay at any
Right.
time.
Right.
Even if you're like hanging with your friend on the couch, get your pillow. Yeah.
Yeah. At any time, at almost any time, except when you're like working corporate and you're sitting in a meeting. You're like, excuse
Unfortunately,
me, everyone. I'm just gonna we
in the
wish.
corporate world, not so much.
One day, one day. Who knows?
No, but for the corporation I own, I let my people do whatever they want.
Heck yeah, girl. Lead the way. Lead the way. Yeah. So Dakota, she has a cold, and I have a weird thing going on with my eye. So if anyone tunes in through YouTube, you'll see us in a sight.
Just being like
But
extra human today, you know? So,
yeah. Oh yeah, extra human about this very extra human topic.
absolutely.
But before we get into our tender topic of today, I have a couple starter questions for you.
Yeah.
First one is, what is your sun, moon, and rising, if you know?
Yes. So, okay, pretty sure my sun is Sagittarius.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
And then my moon is Cancer and my rising is Gemini.
Mhm. And my listeners know that I collect cancers. You're one of my cancers I've collected.
Yes.
Um, and
Yes.
so what about your big three? Is there anything in your big three that like really feels like you the most from what you've learned and picked up along the way?
I think all three of them, to be honest. Like, I am a Sag through and through with how
For sure.
adventurous and unwilling to stick to the status quo I am. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very emotional, so I would say that's my Cancer coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Gemini is an interesting one. I'm still learning about that one, but I would say from like a personality spectrum, this is going to sound kind of bad, but I do feel like I've got two sides to me. Um
Mm.
and they're very different. So that would be my Gemini, I think, coming out sort of
Yeah, I'm like, do
that's
I know where her Gemini comes out? I mean, you are a big talker and communicator. I feel like that's pretty Gemini-ish.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, Gemini is one of the signs that I just don't know as well. So it's hard for me to like pick up on it in people, but you'll be someone I learn about it through, truly.
Awesome. Yeah, but I do feel like all three for me for sure, with Sag probably coming in the hardest.
Heck yeah, you are such a Sag. And I would add to the list of things that are very Saggy. I find Sagittarians like very, I don't know, like very positive, very optimistic, big energy in that way. And you totally bring that for sure.
Thanks, friend.
Okay, so next question.
Yes.
You know, here at Spirit Club, slash, you know, being my friend, that we're all about doing the inner work. And so, just curious, we'll get deep right away. What sort of inner work is alive for you right now in your life?
Oh, so, coming off of one of the hardest years I've ever had, I actually went through a lot of loss this year. Excuse me for 1 second,
Mm-hmm.
guys. Okay. I went through a lot of loss this year. And I have had other years that have been similar. But I would say the inner work for me has been learning to live with grief in a way that isn't foreign to me because I've already been through it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's different because of the people that I've lost and how I've lost them,
Mm-hmm.
as well as other deaths that have gone on in my life. So I think for me this year and right now, it's been learning to live with deaths, whether they're big or little, or within my work or myself or physical death.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and understanding that it is very much a part of life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and allowing grief to walk beside me as a passenger, but not necessarily take over to the point that I can't function.
Is that what you mean by learning to live? Like,
Yeah,
as in, I keep living and living life? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
absolutely. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, how very fitting, because that's what we'll be talking about
Yes.
today.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um, and you know, I feel like this topic, talking about grief and death and loss, it's very fitting for this year. I think I talked to you about how we're in a year 9 collectively,
Hmm.
and year 9s are the end of the 9-year cycle. So a
Hmm.
lot of endings taking place this year, and we are right now starting to wrap up the year. You and I are also, at time of recording, Scorpio new moon. Scorpio is all about death and transformation. So there's a lot of like synchronicities to the theme. Um, and so, Dakota, if you would be so generous to share with us, and I know that it is a vulnerable thing to share about, so whatever you feel comfortable sharing,
Hmm.
um, a bit about your life experience around death that has just had you pick up so much in the way of lessons and learnings.
Yeah. It's so funny that as someone who's got Cancer as their moon,
Mm.
I can, this actually plays into my Gemini. I feel like I can be someone who can have a more serious conversation about death and almost like run through it like it's a timeline. And some people might be like, whoa, she's talking about this so nonchalantly. And then on the other side, I can get really emotional about it. So I just want to preface this
Mm.
by saying that sometimes when my walls are up or I'm having a pragmatic conversation about loss with someone, I can come off as a bit cold. And
Mm.
that's not my intention. It's really just like sometimes I can be kind of matter of fact about it. So I'll just lead
Mm.
into this by saying that the first time I experienced massive loss was when I was 24 years old and my mother took her life. And at the time, it ended my world. In
Mhm.
fact, in the 6 months after her passing, I don't even really remember anything. It's like I
Mm.
entered a black hole and then finally came out.
Yeah.
Um, since that time, I've learned that losing my mom was a gift. And it took a lot of work to get there because when I first lost her, I was very upset that she had done this.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, it tore our family apart.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a lot of interesting things that came up. I have a very close knit family, and for us to disband over this death rather than come together was so shocking to me. But
Mm.
over time, I learned, well, when somebody takes their own life, there's a lot of anger there. So, but eventually over time, I realized I almost kind of started to feel like I was put on this earth to maybe do the things that she couldn't.
Mm.
That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Because,
Yes.
yeah, because my mom and we have a lot of similarities. We're both entrepreneurs.
Mm.
We had very similar personalities. We have a lot of differences too, but very similar personalities. And we are both go-getters. But there was a lot working against my mom. And I won't get into that because it's a whole story in and of itself. But that was kind of my first brush with loss. And it
Big
was
loss.
a
Yes.
big one.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. From there, that same kind of within that same sort of time frame, I lost two grandfathers, which I think grandparents they're hard to lose obviously because and especially for someone like myself who grew up with my grandparents and they were almost like a second set of parents for me, really challenging, but at the same time it's different because they're in the winter of their lives,
Mm.
hopefully,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and older.
Mm-hmm.
It's I find it's the folks who die younger that are harder to take.
Of
Um,
course.
but yeah, it was interesting because I went through a bunch all at once. And then just after that, we lost a cousin in the family to a motorcycle accident. And we also lost a cousin to a blood clot who was young. So it was just like a lot all at once. And then I got a nice break for about a decade.
Mm.
And this year, I lost my stepmom
Yeah.
to cancer in August. And she was only 55 years old. And then shortly thereafter, I lost my grandmother.
Yeah.
And
My
then this
God.
just in, Angel. My cousin passed a few days ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she had been battling cancer for 10 years and was in a lot of pain and she passed away. So, it's so interesting to me that these things happen in sequence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's
I'm
been a lot.
curious.
Yeah, like I'm
Mm,
37 and it's like, whew, that's a lot.
yeah, that's a lot. I mean, and this summer it was so like, your stepmother, losing your stepmother,
Hmm.
which maybe you could share her name,
Yeah, Kathy.
Kathy,
Cat.
losing Kathy. And then it was only like, what was it, a month later
Yeah, then we
with your
lost,
grandmother?
yeah, my grandma Gail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first of all, may they all rest in peace.
Thank you.
And just sending love out to them and anyone listening who is recalling their own loss, either near or far.
Mhm.
Just say a little silent prayer for everyone. And so, Dakota, you had between your mom and then, I think you said how many years later? 9?
Yeah,
One,
I would say around 9 years or so. There were
years later, your stepmom and grandmother, these two cycles. There's a lot of life that happened in between there.
so much life. Yes. Yeah.
And how do you feel that your experience of loss shifted from, the first time when you lost your mom to this summer with all that back-to-back loss that you're in right now?
Yeah. I think it's interesting for me because I'm sorry, I just want to answer this really thoughtfully. when I first experienced all that loss, I was in my 20s. Um, and I've always been, this sounds so cliche, but I've always been told I'm an old soul. And I've
Mhm.
always felt that. So even when I went through the loss in my 20s, I felt like I handled it not well. And I don't like saying that because I think any way that we handle grief is good if
Mm.
we're handling it, right?
Mhm.
Even if we're
Mhm.
not handling it, it's fine. Um,
Mhm.
everybody handles grief differently, and there's no good or bad in handling grief. But I think this time around, I was more mature. And so, especially knowing that my stepmom had gone through cancer and was going through cancer, um, it allowed me to kind of prepare, I guess. And
Mhm.
similarly with my grandma, um, I knew she was getting older and life was getting harder for her. It was getting harder for her to want to be here. This was my mom's mom.
Mhm.
So, she missed her daughter. She had some other stuff going on. I think she was kind of ready to call it, which I think is beautiful in its own way. If you've lived your life and you're like, hey, I think I'm ready to go to my forever home or whatever you believe in. I do think that that's beautiful. It's just harder for the people that get left behind, obviously. But I think the main difference, Angel, I would have to say, is the preparedness and the maturity around it. It never gets easier, and I will tell you, in back in August, it was very hard. I'm
Mhm.
okay now, ish, but
Mhm.
I was I was a bit of a wreck in August. But
Mhm.
it was that, oh, I'm allowed to be this way. I'm allowed to be sad.
Mhm.
Realizing that, like, I didn't have to be there for my dad every second of every day physically, just knowing that I like was here was enough. Um, and just also realizing that in death we get closer to other people that are still here too.
Oh.
So just seeing like the silver linings
Mhm.
rather than being like, oh my God, someone's died and this is horrible and it's like the end of something, more like it's the beginning of something, actually.
Mhm.
It's the beginning
Mhm.
of more time with my dad. It's the beginning of a bigger relationship with him. And it's hard because it's different. Like, I don't love that she's not here anymore and that life feels very different. But it's almost as though we're put on a new path without that
Mhm.
person
Right.
physically
Yeah.
being here. So yeah.
Yeah. I really love that in death we get to get closer to those who are still here. I just wanted to pin that because I really think I think everyone can resonate with that in some way, you know?
Yeah.
Anyone who's gone through loss, there's sort of some healings can happen across relationships, some deeper connection can happen, some new connection can happen, and often does. Um,
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as someone who's experienced a lot of grief herself, and then I know that you are a very caring, loving family member and friend. I'm curious what grief has looked like for you, like the range of what it has looked like for you, and what do you see it looking like in others, just to give everyone an idea of these are all the ways grief might look.
Yeah, I mean, for me, grief can look like needing to be completely alone,
Mm.
like being a bit of a recluse. Um, and for somebody who's so extroverted, I think it scares my friends and family a little bit when I just don't want to be around anybody.
Yeah.
Just because it's very unlike me. But it's funny, when I'm in a lot of pain, I actually prefer to be alone
Mm.
because
That's it.
I do a good job of processing things on my own. Then when I'm ready, I'll come and process it with other people. But I think when someone dies, the first thing that's going to happen is everybody who loves you is going to come rushing, and it can be very
Mm.
overwhelming. So the first thing I would say is it shows up for me as needing to take a step back in some cases. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's only like two or three people that I really want to deep dive into it with. And then you can go ahead and, take time for yourself, and that's fine. It can look like crying, you know, 20 times a day for months on end and having like guttural cries followed by moments of laughter. You kind of feel like a psych patient, but like it's totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it can feel like the need to want to escape and go off to somewhere special. Like for me, that's the mountains in Alberta here. And just be alone in nature. It can look like sleeping excessively
Mm-hmm.
for like the first couple of weeks because you're exhausted emotionally and your nervous system is kind of set on fire a little bit. It can also look like joy, though. It can look like laughter. It can look like joy. It can look like wanting to spend more time with the people that are still here. I know I had a really rough time leaving my dad's side after my stepmom passed. Like, I'd leave his house after a really good visit and I would just like sit in my car and cry in the driveway because I didn't want to leave
Mm-hmm.
him. And I think it can also look like being in pain for longer than you want, right? But as long as you are okay and you're not like leaning towards self-harm or um you know getting into a place where you can't get out of a darker place, I think just being with your grief is so important in order to work through it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other
Yeah.
thing it can look like, I just want to point out as well, um I'm someone who definitely doesn't love pharmaceuticals, but it can also look like getting assistance from a pharmaceutical if you need it. So, because of the amount of loss I went through this year, including some other personal things I was dealing with, I decided to go on some anti anxiety medication because I needed help. And
Oh,
so it
yeah.
can also look like asking for help, not being ashamed, and doing what you need to do in order to get through the period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of permission there. There's like a lot of letting it all be there and be and not judged.
That's right.
And like I'm sure also sometimes it looks like irritability, anger. There's probably some tension. I know you shared with me some tension in the family
Yes.
that comes up.
Yes.
Um, so
Yeah,
there's probably
that's
quite
very
a.
true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in the early days after my stepmom passed, my dad and I were spending an excessive amount of time together, more than we have in a while. And he would go off on a tangent about something that I maybe didn't agree with, and I'd get annoyed. And then I'd
Mm-hmm.
immediately feel bad because, like, my dad's going through something horrible. But I think it's what Angel said, giving yourself that permission to, like, you are human. It's okay to be annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
With
Yeah, and also
yeah,
giving others like that free pass and that like, okay, I give myself permission to show up however I'm gonna show up right now.
yeah,
And others in that like, oh, okay, if they do snap or something like that, just
yeah,
knowing that they get a little bit of a pass right now.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think just remembering, and it's hard to do this sometimes. Sometimes you're just like in a thick fog that you feel like you can't get out of. So it's really hard to hold space for other people. Um, but it's knowing your limits
Mm.
and holding space for yourself and other people.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I could see that being a challenge for a lot of people in this community because I know that the Club community has a lot of empaths and
Yeah.
folks with more of a others' needs are more important than my own mentality,
Mm.
um, which gets really, yeah, it gets really dicey when you're going through grief and you are allowing others to take up all the space when you and your grief need some as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned at the get-go that you know what you've been learning through this most recent loss period is how to live with, how to walk alongside. So
Mhm.
what want to share about what you've learned and what that looks like?
Yeah, so I think one of the most beautiful things that I've been given, if I'm gonna look at death as a gift, and again, if you're not seeing it this way and you've gone through a loss, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're like failing at life. And trust me, there are times when I've looked to my faith that I have and been like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why did you do this? Why is this happening? And I've had my moments of anger, and grief. But in most of my moments, I look at death now and just everything that comes at me in life because I've had and it's funny, like, I'm not the only one. In fact, I've had a pretty incredible life compared to other humans on this planet. We think about everything that's going on down in the Middle East and has been forever. We think about wars that are happening, war-torn countries, people who are experiencing insane levels of loss every single day, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they're continuing to go on, it's almost like a privilege how we experience loss in North America. But I think there's a couple of things here. I want to point out that in North America, we're not really taught at a young age that death is a natural thing that happens in life.
Totally.
And
Totally.
so
Say more.
yeah, and like even though my family's done what they can to prepare me, until you go through it yourself, especially in a place like North America, you're not going to really know about it until you go through it. And so I would say what that's looked like for me is just knowing that any obstacle that comes my way in life, I can either look at it as an obstacle or I can look at it as a learning experience or a life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And even though some things that have been thrown my way, such as losing my mom and my stepmother, have been really hard, um, I feel like I've learned a lot from both. Like, I've learned how to care for my mental health as a result of losing my mother to suicide. I've learned how to create a network of support that I can consistently reach out to. I've learned how to be that for other people. Um, Cancer, obviously, a way different conversation, but even then, just like it's a reminder like of, okay, am I taking care of my health? Um and also just like, am I living my life the way that I want to live it
Mm-hmm.
and to the fullest and best way that I can, so that I can enjoy every day and do the things that I want to do in this lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
And am I treating people, that I love with respect? Am I spending enough time with the people that I love? Am I saying no to things that don't serve me? So I've just always kind of used death when I'm not in a really bad place with it initially, because that does happen,
Mm-hmm.
to serve as sort of that reminder. If that
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's a little, and a lot of people will say that about like health scares or whatever, but it's kind
Yeah,
of that similar taste of like, okay, like a check-in, like a checkpoint, like a little reality check.
exactly.
And this most recent period of loss for you, I don't know if you feel like sharing about this, but I did see you make some pretty big shifts in your life following it. Um, do you want to share anything about what that inspired in you?
I do. So funny enough, both times, and I'm just going to take the big matriarchs in my life, because they've been the pivotal losses that have triggered change.
Mm-hmm.
When my mother passed away when I was in my 20s, I was in the middle of doing a degree that I was paying for out of pocket, going into debt for, that I wasn't entirely passionate about. And I was only really I was doing it for myself, but I was also doing it because other people told me I had to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget leaving university, which was very scary for me at the time, with I think about $30,000 in debt. Um, and pursuing something completely different as a result of my mother passing. And this time, um, I've owned a marketing agency for the last 10 years, and I love my business, but it's been up and down for probably the last couple of years just with the market and AI coming on and some disruption in the market and things like that. And I was just kind of struggling to really continue with the business model that I had. And after Kathy passed away, I finally got the kick in the pants to make some decisions around that. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And things are so much better for it. And a million things have improved as a result. But I essentially walked away from the business model that I was building because it wasn't serving me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
very scary because I had been pushing it for a year and a half, I think.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, you were really trying to make it work, but constantly falling into this burnout cycle. And at some point, I mean, at this particular point, you were just like, no, like I can't do this to myself anymore.
That's right. Absolutely.
Proud
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah. And now I'm in a position where I have things that I'm doing with work that are really serving me, that I love, that are paying the bills, but also feeding my soul. Um, I've also opened up to my dad more than I ever have because I come from a um I don't want to call it a legacy, but I come from like a lineage that yeah, a lineage. I come from a lineage of high achieving, extremely driven, dare I say, maybe slightly egotistical people where like failure to us, isn't really an option, even though it is, if that makes sense. And I finally opened up to my dad about my struggles as an entrepreneur. And I asked him for like support, emotional support. Because the other thing at play here is I am like a single gal and I'm doing everything on my own. And and he was like over the moon, of course I'll be there for you, whatever you need, kind of a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
our relationship has just like our relationship was good before my stepmom passed away and before all of this happened. But now like I think when I lose my dad one day, that's gonna be a rough one because we are so close as a result, and now we have all this beautiful stuff going on. But I've never felt more supported after having just admitted, hey,
Mm-hmm.
actually, kind of struggling a little bit here, here, and here. And it's making me feel this way. And then to be reminded by the people that I love the most that, like, hey, just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're a failure. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
you're a winner for admitting it and
Yeah.
asking for help. So,
Yes.
so that's been incredible.
Beautiful. We thank Kathy for that gift that she gave you and that she gave you and your dad together.
Yeah.
Um, and it makes me think about support. Um, Actually, I'll share a little story of how Dakota and I first met because it's kind of like this full circle moment of us talking about death and grief and loss. Because when I met Dakota, it was in 2016, and my stepsister had just died of cancer. And Dakota and I worked at a restaurant together. Shout out Fergus and Bix. And we knew each other a little bit, like you do with some. Dakota had only just started there,
Yeah.
and Lena passed away. And you had left me this little like care package back in the like break room, if that's what we call it, where we hung our jackets. And it was so sweet. It was just like these little gestures. And I was floored by it. I was just floored by the compassion of someone who wasn't super close to me. And it was also one of those, like, if you know moments where when you're going through loss and you are someone who has been through loss and you reach out and support, there's this, like, if you know moment. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thank you for that now, almost 10 years later. Oh my gosh, we're almost going to celebrate our 10-year friendship anniversary.
But hopefully with a trip to Greece.
Yes, hopefully over here. Um, but I think this is a good one to talk about. I found, so Dakota, as you know, um, two of my cousins had passed within a week of each other when I moved here. And something that was really challenging for me is I really felt for my family, my extended family. And when I say extended, I mean family members that some of them I haven't talked to in years, or family members that I say very little to every year, maybe a happy birthday or whatever it is. But I felt truly in my heart that I wanted to support in some way, but I didn't know the right thing to do. And you don't want to be that, like, person that pops out of the woodwork when you're going through, I don't know. So I don't know, anything you'd like to share about how to support others who are going through loss?
Yes, I have a lot of feedback on that. Um, I think the biggest thing to do when someone has lost someone is do a gut check with yourself around not what you want to give that person, but what they may need.
Mm,
If that makes sense. Because everybody's so different with loss and grief. And some people, as I mentioned, want to be surrounded by people, other people want to be alone. Um, and really just offering, like, dropping off food with no questions, just putting it on their step. I dropped off food, or here's a skip the dishes gift card just to make sure you're fed. Or I dropped off your favorite dessert, but just not having any expectations that they're gonna call
mm,
you back or even say thank you, just because they're probably in a fog and waiting
mhm,
to kind of give back.
mhm,
People going through loss, oftentimes, I want to say, are pouring from one of the emptiest cups they've ever had in their lives. So it's really just having that compassion of, like, it's like when someone has a baby. I'm gonna, drop something off, clean up for you, do something for you with no expectations in return.
mhm,
The other thing I would caution against is, as much as we want to say things like, how are you? Or,
mm,
oh, this person was so incredible, and oh, at least they didn't suffer, or like having commentary on the manner of passing.
mm,
I'm not saying it's like, if it slips out, I would say, like, most people know that that's just compassion, but just being careful to not form an opinion or comment too much, I would say, is probably good advice. And really, just like, if you're in the presence of that person, just giving them a hug if that's something that they enjoy, or like putting your hand on them, on their shoulder, allowing them to talk about it, like asking them directly, like, is there anything you want to discuss, or like, what's one of your favorite memories of this person, but just trying to stay away from, like, really getting into the nitty gritty with them.
mhm.
Right.
And then, yeah, it sounds like a lot of what you're describing is like, I am here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here and I love you. It's sort of like mm, so that if someone wants to connect deeper, or to ask for something or to share, they know you're here. But
Yes.
it's not like, oh, I'm inserting myself and I'm making me your problem. Like, I'm making me something that you have to manage, which is, yeah, above and beyond what I'm sure
Yeah.
most people are able to do in that first little while.
And I'll tell you guys just a really quick little story about a time that I actually did that with a friend. And I think our friendship was having some challenges to begin with. So I wouldn't say this is why it ended, but I learned this firsthand. A friend of mine's child was going through a bit of a medical intervention. And sometimes my way of showing compassion and love is to make it about me to try and be relevant and relatable,
Mm,
um, thinking that I'm offering something of value when really I'm not,
mm,
and almost being like too aggressive with trying to show up. And that's exactly what I did. And I think I overwhelmed her. And it came to the point where it was like, this is a lot. So just trying to, again, feel into or ask, what do you need right now? I think
mhm,
the best question to ask somebody who's grieving is, case in point, hey, what do you need right now?
mhm,
And if they say, I would love this, then go for it. If they say nothing, then just leave it alone.
mhm, yeah.
And just the idea that you're there is enough.
And I like the advice of no expectations. No
Hmm.
expectations.
And don't take it personally because, like, grief is a very funny thing. Like, you will literally, I don't want to speak for other people's experiences, but I've felt like I've been walking through when someone dies, you feel like you're walking through a forest of fog, and it's only a matter of time before the fog will clear. But when you're in the fog, it's like you're on a different plane.
Mm,
Like the veil is so thin. It's like you're like not here. And a
mhm,
good friend of mine actually explained it so well to me how she experienced her own grief. And I really resonated with this. Is she said it's like a tent. You're born with a tent, you're in the tent, and all of the stakes holding down the tent are the people that love you. And every time someone leaves this physical earth, a tent like strap or whatever comes undone,
mm,
and your tent gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and you're faced with your own mortality as well. And
mm,
then finally one day, hopefully on a in a far off time when you're older and surrounded by people that you love, your tent goes away as well. But the more
mhm,
your tent comes undone, the more like you're kind of in between the two planes, if that makes sense. That's kind of
interesting.
how she said she felt.
Hmm.
It's like you lose your tethers to your people that love
Mhm.
you. And
And you're like tethers to this life,
that's right.
tethers to earth. Like you said, like, so much of you and your memories are shaped by your mom's. And when you lose that tether, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm sure you feel a little like, where am I? And what will life be?
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like we should talk a little bit about why death is so hard for us humans.
Wow.
Um, because I would say personally, since I started being in this work,
Mhm.
since I started understanding and connecting to a bigger concept of the soul, it started to make death less scary for me,
Yeah.
because I started to understand this life beyond, and that as much as I think this is, my one lifetime with you, for example, it probably isn't. I will probably see you again.
Yes.
Um, and so those types of things have really helped me. But yeah, from your side of the fence, why do you think
Hmm.
death is so hard for us?
So first of all, I love that you have that mindset. It's something that's given me a lot of solace as well, that this isn't our only life. Um, I have other thoughts too on that, but I think death is so hard because it feels so final.
Yeah,
I think that that's what it is. And it's a bit of a, can I swear?
you can play.
It's a mind fuck. Like it's the biggest, actually, it's not even a bit of a mind fuck. It's the biggest mind fuck of life.
Mm-hmm.
One day, someone you love is physically sitting in front of you. Like I'm looking at my beautiful puppy who is the love of my life. She's laying here. One day she's not going to be here. And that's just the
Mm-hmm.
reality, no matter
Right.
how much I want to fight it in my mind that, oh no, she's going to live forever. One day Bales isn't going to be here anymore. And the fact
Mhm.
that she's here one day and gone the next, it's like the biggest Houdini mind fuck you could ever not be able to comprehend.
Right.
And that's the finality of it is their physical form leaves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So even if I feel my stepmom around me constantly, and I do, I feel her around me a lot. I feel my mom around me sometimes. Haven't really felt my grandma yet, but I'm sure she'll come. Um, it's just that they're not here. And I think something that's been really healing for me in these last two deaths, and trigger warning, I'm going to talk about physical forms with like that are have passed on. When my mom passed away, I remember walking into her viewing and being very upset because the body did not look like my mom, and it was really unsettling for me, honestly. Like I actually had a bit of a hard time like giving her a kiss goodbye, touching her
Yeah,
hand,
of
because
course.
she was so cold and it was just very strange, and I didn't get to see her right after she passed away. What I found so healing this time around, and I was actually shocked at how like okay I was with it, was I saw my stepmom mere hours after she passed, and I saw my grandma about an hour after she passed. And I literally hung out with their bodies for a few hours. Like I held my stepmom for a while. I like cleaned up her hand because there was some stuff that had happened with her passing that was very human and messy, and I like washed her arm and her hand off. I removed her jewelry with my dad and looked at her fingernails and her veins. And with my grandma, I actually took a bunch of pictures of me holding her hand because I've always appreciated and loved a youthful hand next to an elderly hand, and just all those years of cooking and gardening and holding space for people and being a parent. I always find I can see that in people's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny, like I'm sitting here in the hallway like photographing my dead grandmother's hand with my hand, and my aunt's looking at me and I'm like, what, I just want it as a memory. And she's like, no, I
Yeah.
get it. But like just being there with their physical bodies helped me to understand their soul is no longer here.
Yes, right.
And this is just their physical vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is like a resounding fact that we have
Mm-hmm.
souls that must go somewhere.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but like, I think it's hard for people because of the finality and the fact that it's that Houdini effect of they're here, they're not. But if you can have the opportunity to see the physical form of someone and really say goodbye to it, I have always found that to be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm realizing as you shared the story of like being able to be with the bodies of your stepmom and grandmother, I'm like, I think most of the time, once death actually comes around, many of us are pushing it away. So we're probably not looking. We're not being with the
Yeah,
truth, being with what's actually come up because it hurts so much, because it's so scary, you know?
it is. Yeah.
But what you were able to do and overcome is actually just be with the truth, be with what is in the moment, and that helps ground you into it. And also, it's such a beautiful, like, from a ritual standpoint, I think it's so beautiful to care for the body and their soul, is nearby. They've just passed. And
Yeah.
for them to see you caring for them, I don't know, it's really beautiful.
It is. And it's funny, I'm only 37 years old, but as a single gal, I do think at some point here I've got to look at my will and my estate,
Hmm.
right? And figure out, like, okay, if I did pass away, who's looking after everything? That's the other thing that I've learned through death, because it is in and of itself, like, like as spiritual as it is, there's also a lot of paperwork when someone
Just
dies.
the actual logistics. Yeah.
When you're getting married soon, so like you and Shane at some point will probably want to have something for the other to be, because at some point someone's
Don't make me be an adult. What are you talking about?
no, but like seriously, it's so funny. Like, and and then as we go through life, like if I ever were to get married again because I'm divorced and or have a child, then you have to like change that again. But it got me really thinking recently about like wishes and how I would prefer to leave my legacy here on earth. And what I came to was, because I'm not yet a mom of my own, I have all these wonderful kids that I'm an auntie to, and people that I would really love to have certain things to remember me by. And the
Mm.
other day is kind of just like a healing exercise, and pragmatic exercise. I kind of wrote down like, okay, well, my estate's going to go to these people and these items are going to go to these people, and this is the
Mm.
person that's going to execute on it, and this is the person that's going to help with my business stuff. And I think it was kind of beautiful because I realized, like, I'm not only building my life for me, I'm actually in some ways kind of doing it for the people that I love too. And
Right.
that gave me some healing and purpose in dealing with grief.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe an exercise that'll help someone. Totally.
totally. And
And mhm.
I was just going to say, I think in North America, what's unfortunate is we see this stuff as very morbid,
Mm-hmm.
but
Totally.
it's not. Like,
Yeah.
there are cultures in Asia who actually exhume their loved ones on a yearly basis and celebrate with them. They redress them, they wash them,
Oh, yeah.
and then they
Wow.
put them back.
I
They're,
know. I mean,
yeah,
I would be really curious to learn a little bit more about cultures outside of Western,
yeah,
how they work through, sit with death. Because as we're talking about, I think like death is so difficult for us. A big reason why it's difficult is because we label it as morbid. We may label it as this thing that we don't want to talk about, think about, feel, consider, all that sort of thing. But
exactly.
all that is just like resistance to what is true. If we look around us, death is happening all the time in the natural world.
Like constantly. Um, and it's so funny. I'm actually just looking something up that I read the other day that I wanted to mention in this cast today. And I was reading this article on this actor who, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Mary Poppins, but he's the chimney sweeper guy, Dick Van Dyke. And he's just turned 99, and he was saying how he's not afraid of dying, and he's acutely aware that he's like on borrowed time. But every single roadblock that has hit him in his life, he's used it as like a learning experience and a way to experience life and the human condition that much more fully. And I resonated so deeply with that because that's how I've tried to
Mm.
deal with grief, loss, pain, roadblocks, challenges, anything that's kind of depressing, is realizing that this too shall pass. But when you're
Mhm.
going through a happy moment also, or you're like on a high, this too shall pass. And life is
Totally.
a gentle dance of both things. So the
Mhm.
more you can lean into things and realize that it's part of the intricate, mapping of your life, I think
Mhm.
the better off people will be.
Right. Yeah. The old, it's happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
And how very Sagittarius of you to look at it this way. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I see you embodying that. And And I commend you, and I hope, I think everyone is somewhere different in their process today. And I think everything you've talked about is just like full permission to be and be how you are, feel how you feel.
Yes.
But if they're looking for relief, this too shall pass.
And it will. That is one promise that I can confidently make to anybody who's going through it right now with a death, whether it's a physical death or a death of something. Um, like it will pass. Now, I think as humans, we can sometimes make it so that that is harder in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that sometimes we don't allow it to pass, right?
Sure. Yeah. We cling or we
Yeah.
dramatize or,
Yeah.
yes.
And I would say that's a good indicator that maybe you might need some support, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that is perfect right there, unless there's anything else you feel that we haven't touched on.
No, I mean, I think that was a great conversation. It went by so quickly, and in my like sick days, I'm like, did I get everything that I wanted to? But I think I did. I'm excited to listen to it when it drops.
Yeah, beautiful. And, thank you for talking about something so vulnerable and still quite fresh to you. But I think, you decided when this time was right. And I also think talking about it in this way is giving a piece of your grieving process to you. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And like I told you, just since I left, so many people, yourself included in my life, started going through major loss
Yeah.
with this 9 year or whatever. And so I'm glad that we can just open up conversation about this taboo subject a little bit.
Absolutely. And I guess the last thing I would leave you guys with is like even Angel leaving Canada could be a loss, right? Like a friend moving away, but then look at the beautiful beginning that she gets. And me as her friend, I get to go visit her and like experience other parts of the world with her. And so, like, again, just that reminder that there's always, with when one door closes, one door will for sure open. So,
Yeah. So where can we find that beginning? And what a perfect statement for today. We are filming this on Scorpio new moon, which is really like new moon, new beginning, but Scorpio, which is like what had to end in order for that new beginning. So a beautiful bow is tied. Um, okay, my friend, I love you so much. I'm so happy to connect with you this way, taking our phone calls and voice notes to the pod. And I hope you feel better.
thank you. Thanks for putting up with me, you guys. I hope that it didn't sound too bad.
No, we were just rolling.
Good, good. Awesome.
Okay, I love you much.
I love you
Bye,
too.
Spirit Club.